This is an intense video, guys. A lot is going on that I have to report about. There was a conference in Bagnoli with all the important people, and they're very worried that at any time without a warning, there could be a phreatic eruption. But that's not all. The Minister of Civil Defense is kind of blaming the residents that they're not careful enough. We'll get to that because that's a bummer. I read this, I'm like, really? And then amidst all that, the temperature of the fumaroles in the Sulphur crater has reached maximum value of 173 degrees Celsius. That is now the new norm. So things are going this way. I've shown this to you. And all that while we do have an ongoing earthquake swarm. But this thing, I mean, again, if we look at the list, this has been going on for 6 weeks, at least almost every day, several earthquakes every day. But the authorities always say if there's a few hours break in between the earthquakes, they say ended, new one. So this one has interesting numbers if you want to twist the numbers. We'll get to that. I read this, I'm like, oh, what? I don't know, very, very strange, but these earthquakes, they not only come with a big roar and a shaking as far as into Naples, but also residents reported something unusual that has intensified. They felt dizzy and they're smelling sulfur. So guys, stay with me. Interesting but scary video today. And I also want to point out something, because since now the Minister of Civil Defense is blaming the citizens, what about the evacuation that took place in the 1980s, where 40,000 people had been evacuated with an earthquake situation that was not as escalating as it's right now? The largest number of earthquake at that time was a magnitude 4.2. Well, this year we already had 4.42, 4.6, and in 2023 they said, well, one more magnitude 4 and we're done. We evacuate because they said we will raise the alert level to orange, which triggers some evacuations. They only had, like, I think at that time, one magnitude 4 earthquake. Now we have 2, 4.6, the highest ever recorded, they say, since the Monte Nuovo eruption at least. But this, how can I say, convention where everyone was talking about the latest risk, everyone was there. After that convention, in an interview, Civil Protection Minister Nello Musumeci complained that the citizens of Pozzuoli lacked risk awareness. Do they? I mean, they're being rattled every day. Maybe they lack solid information, because he said only 5% of the allocated aid funds for voluntary relocation measures had been claimed. Measures to restore building safety were also not being implemented on a sufficient scale. He said one problem is probably that many buildings there in Campi Flegrei have been built illegally or add on illegally. They don't have building permits, valid building permits. So people are afraid if they apply for aid to upgrade their buildings for earthquake safety. You can't upgrade them for volcanic explosion safety, by the way. The only thing that you can do is upgrade them so that they don't collapse on you when, should there be an earthquake before a volcanic event, that they don't fall on the roads and clog everything. But against a volcano, these buildings will not shield you. So don't be fooled about that. So a building permit there becomes invalid as soon as the work carried out goes away, deviates from the submitted plans. So the Civil Defense Minister thinks a general amnesty regarding building violations should be considered. But the problem is, I've heard from many engineers that have experience with earthquakes and collapsed buildings in the area, in Naples, in Rome, when there were bigger earthquakes. And they say everything that holds these old masonry buildings together is, the grout is like dust. They're only still standing because they're leaning on each other. So is there even a way to fix these buildings? I have my doubts. But blaming the citizens of Pozzuoli, I mean, I'm wondering, right? You see this here. Earthquake swarm has begun, earthquake swarm ends. There was this and this amount of earthquakes. But is there anything that they're saying to the citizens? I mean, gosh, guys, these are not all highly academic people that read all the studies or whatever, or watch my channel, then they would know more. But no, let's be serious. They live their daily lives. A lot of people are poor. There was just a recent survey out in Italy. Naples is one of the poorest cities. They say one of the not so happy cities. It's pretty depressed. And Pozzuoli is right Greater Naples area, although I find it very beautiful there. There's crime problems, very, very poor people. So they want some guidance. So it's not that, I know it's difficult. What do you say? Mayor of Pozzuoli says there's an earthquake swarm going on. I have been informed by the INGV, by the Vesuvius Observatory. That's all he says. He's not saying, well, don't worry, it's because, don't worry because. Yeah, that's the question. He cannot say that because he doesn't know. He should rather say, well, you should worry because. But if he says that, then people are like, we know Italians, then they go to the streets and then they start screaming. And they did this in 2024 when the magnitude 4.4 earthquake happened. That, oh, where's the civil protection? You're not here fast enough, and da 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 da. And they have the right to do so. I agree with them. But politicians, they don't want that to happen, right? So they're in a precarious situation. Then we had, I mentioned it last time, there was a case in the past where scientists gave just an assumption and then something happened and people were injured and they shouldn't have said there is no danger, and vice versa. They could have gone to jail, took years of trial, and so they were accused of manslaughter. And because they said, well, there is no earthquake risk or a low, and then a big earthquake happened that ended some people. So here, what do you say? I know, but that's why the people feel left alone. So I think they should officially say, I haven't really heard that they have a lot of funds available to really make people move, give up their home in Pozzuoli, for example, and move somewhere else. And the problem is they have to offer this simultaneously to all the family members because they only go together. I've talked to many locals. They don't leave grandma behind or an auntie or someone, which is beautiful. So I think they need more official guidance in that, just to say they have a lack of awareness of the risk. I don't think that's true. They just don't know what to do. They're not rich. They don't have the money and say, hey, let's all move into our vacation home in Rimini or Venezia. No, they can't. The people that can probably already live there. So that's a problem. The evacuation that happened in the 1980s, the caprock layer was way stronger then. Now it has only a third of the strength left. And I want to give you a quick overview because you need that to understand what I'm telling you next. Early 1980s, specifically 1982 to 1984, and you see it in the graphic behind me, the land rise, the earthquakes, Brady seismic crisis, how they called it. It was a volcanic crisis. Approximately 40,000 residents were evacuated from the central town of Pozzuoli due to intense ground uplift and earthquake swarm. So the cause, the area, they say, experienced significant volcanic unrest. And then they say it's known as Brady seism or ground deformation, intense, shallow earthquakes, which caused extensive damage to buildings in the historic town center. The ground rose by more than 6 feet, that's around 1.8 meters during this period, rendering the port too shallow for large ships and causing cracks in buildings and roads. Timeline: seismic activity increased significantly in late 1983 with the largest earthquake. That was, now we have to say, only a magnitude 4.2 that occurred on October 4th in 1983. And following this, commerce in the area, tourism, everything, development came to a standstill, restaurants empty, schools closed, government had ordered the mass evacuation of residents. So the evacuation involved temporarily resettling people in nearby resort areas with a new settlement, 5,000 apartments in the Monte Ruscello area. So they already had 5,000 apartments. Probably now they're being rented out to other people or sold. The crisis caused significant psychological distress if you're evacuated from your home for such a long time, significant disruption of businesses. Of course, people were angry about that because the unrest subsided by late 1984 and no eruption occurred. So the episode ended and then people were angry. Oh, we were evacuated, nothing happened. And now I think everyone's afraid. Should we do that again? Because I think you should. At least start one by one, slowly. And scientists are saying that because this episode started in 2005, 20 years ago. And it's escalating. The magnitudes are getting higher. The cumulative energy of all earthquakes added together is increasing. Temperatures are increasing. Gas flows are increasing. Everything's increasing. The volcano is saying, well, guys, I've warned you, right? But really, guys, with this convention, the concern is now also, it's not only visible in the data, you can hear it from the scientists. And I mean, I've reported about every study. I'm reading them all for you. I'm reporting about what the local scientists are saying when they say, I'm speaking outside the official institution, right? Growing concerns about phreatic eruptions in the Campi Flegrei area. That would be without magma. But we know Monte Nuovo had a few phreatic eruptions that blew the pipe for magma to come later. So, and there were several, not only one. Of course, this is not the big boom, the super volcanic eruption, if it's a phreatic eruption. It's like White Island style plus minus, right? Guys, the earthquake at Campi Flegrei, that's southern Italy, by the way, for the ones that don't know. They continue and there are no signs of any easing of the situation. It's on the contrary. The latest geophysical measurements show, I said it, fumarole temperature has risen. And at this conference, I want to be clear. This is not an assumption that I am taking away from this conference. The volcanologists stated that the risk of phreatic explosions is increasing. And there were all the who is who. They were there discussing this. So in the last 24 hours, we basically had over 60 earthquakes. It's crazy. Highest magnitude 2.7. Look at that list here. Gosh, I saw this, like I was watching it. I like to watch it for a while so that I can report it to you about it. So November 20th, 2.4, and then it goes down on the 19th, a 2.5 and a 2.7, and then so many on the 19th. And these are only the ones above magnitude 1. And then there was a 3.6 nearby. This is a little bit, I have to do some more research what they mean about this. There was another earthquake off the coast, but not really related to Campi Flegrei. So Campi Flegrei didn't have a 3.6. So put that in the back of your heads for now. And but look at this. On the 17th, 2.4. I can go on like this for weeks. I don't see any ending of these earthquake swarms. And interestingly enough, this is a numbers game, and it just occurred to me, guys, because I really like the number 24. They're writing Campi Flegrei earthquake magnitude 2.4 shook at 4:24 a.m. and in the last 24 hours, 42 tremors. So it's always 2-4. I'm like, okay, I don't believe in any. I'm not esoteric. I have to say that. I was just interesting. But at the time they wrote this article, now we have way more than 42 earthquakes, right? Numerous numerous reports of a strong smell of sulfur in the area of the epicenters, especially of the 2.4. But it was spreading. Even people in Naples could smell the sulfur. So also reports throughout a wider area that they smell sulfur. That's the volcano, guys. We heard about the boiling roads, where it's boiling through the pavement, where it's boiling through homes. I've shown you these images. It's punching holes in walls and floors, and then it leaves all the sulfur sediments. It's like a rotten egg odor. So I want to go back to the conference. We've had volcanologists, seismologists, geophysicists, geoscientists. They all have pointed out that there's this rising probability of these dangerous phenomena that could occur, the Phreatic explosion. And they made it clear, and that's so important, that these steam-driven explosions could happen without warning. That means without evacuation. That means with people sitting, living right on top of the volcano, right around the Solfatara. They're living there. They were planning a hotel, to build a hotel there so that you could see the steaming volcano from your balcony. So you see it in the background. We have the INGV president, Fabio Florindo, who opened up the Congress. He says, oh, yeah, it's so important that we do continuous monitoring. But we know monitoring doesn't guarantee you safety. One of his colleagues recently said that in regards to Campi Flegrei. Then, of course, Minister of Civil Defense, Nello Musumeci, Maritime Police, Director of Risk Forecasting and Prevention in Civil Protection, Director of Volcanology Department at the INGV, Director of the Vesuvius Observatory, Scientific Director of the LOVE-CF Campi Flegrei project. And by the way, they have given some news about where they think the magma is. They said that the latest findings on the state of the magmatic system would say that magma is accumulating. It's primarily in two depth ranges, and these ranges keep changing. Now they say at a depth of 6 to 8 kilometers, and then deeper 12 to 16 kilometers. So until then, it used to be 3 to 4 kilometers and 7 to 8 kilometers, and that's what all these studies confirm that we have seen. So I haven't seen a new study that confirms that. So maybe that's coming out after the conference, and they say, but that is important. There is something higher up at shallower depth. They say shallower magma accumulations have been found, but it's probably only magmatic dikes. They're like an intrusion that is trying to reach the surface. Yeah, we had that in the 80s, and then it couldn't break the caprock layer. But now we know such a weakened caprock layer, and study by study, they find new cracks, new vertical cracks, new fault lines, new Achilles heels for the magma to find a way. So at a depth of 3 to 4 kilometers, they think it's only magmatic dikes, and then they cool and solidify relatively quickly compared to the magma intrusions that we see in Iceland, if you have followed my videos. So magma gets out of the magma chamber, wants to try to get to the surface, but can't break through yet, doesn't find a way, and then gets stopped and cools down. That was the reason for the Santorini unrest, by the way. I've said it from the beginning, didn't I? Now it's confirmed. So this is basically the latest, guys. Yeah, what can I say? It's not pretty. It's not pretty, and I'm sure the next earthquake is happening pretty soon. That will rattle the residents again. I don't think that we will have silence with these earthquakes. So I will keep you updated, guys, but roads are cracking, literally. Yeah, there's pictures of it around Mount Etna, and we've had an earthquake swarm at the most unstable flank of Mount Etna. Not the eruptions are the problems with Etna, because we have a big chunk of Etna that is sliding into the sea. And if this breaks all at once, that will be devastating, not only for Sicily, that will cause a tsunami. We've seen it in the fjords in Alaska, for example. We've seen it in Blatten. If that happens in the water, so what's going on Etna? In the end screen, guys, I hope I see you there. Click one of these videos, like and hype this one, guys. If you're new here, subscribe for more, and I see you in a second.